Hello, everyone, and welcome to PERSUIT an HBR webinar on cost certainty in uncertain times. I'd like to introduce with you our speakers. My name is David Falstein, and I head up client strategy and success at PERSUIT. We're pleased to welcome the Chief Commercial Officer at HBR Consulting, Clem, as well as the CEO and founder of PERSUIT, Jim Delkousis, to speak with you today. Before I get into the agenda, I just wanted to mention a few ground rules. So everyone will be muted throughout the presentation. Please submit any questions that you have as you have them via the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom. We'll leave some time at the end for Q&A so that you'll be able to speak openly by clicking the raise your hand button. All right, let's go ahead and share our agenda for you today. We're pleased to present some recent industry trends. So Kevin will present with some recent trends for the HBRs uncovered, and Jim will also speak to you about some recent trends from the Buying Legal Counsel survey that was recently conducted. We'll share an overview of matter level bidding. We'll also present to you some recent client case studies, and then we'll end with Q&A. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jim to introduce PERSUIT.
Good morning for me, good afternoon for everyone. I'm very happy to be on board. So as David said, my name is Jim Delkousis and I'm the founder and CEO of PERSUIT. Here's a bit of an intro slide of some of the customers and the PERSUIT works with, but in a nutshell, David, just going to the next slide, PERSUIT is essentially a platform that enables you to achieve reduced legal cost pricing and pricing certainty at a matter level through the use of best practice AFA and RFP templates. We automate that process. We leverage the power of real-time bidding and surface insights for the benefit of the legal ops and the in-house legal team. So that's a little bit about PERSUIT. Over to you, Clem.
Hey guys, I'm Clem. As David said, I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at HBR Consulting. For those who don't know HBR, we are a consultancy focused on the legal industry, working with both leading law departments and law firms across the US and globally. We provide a variety of services to law departments specifically. You'll see here a variety of different areas from organization and strategy to knowledge management, technology, benchmarking and analytics, as well as legal operations managed services. The focus for today's conversation is really going to be around our services for outside counsel management, how we bring together law departments and their law firm partners to provide greater partnership and value to the enterprise. So we'll talk a little bit more about some of those services here briefly, from spend analysis, which we'll talk about some of the work we did with a key client of ours here shortly, convergence, or just reducing the number of law firms that law departments partner with for stronger relationships and deeper knowledge, both from the firm of the client and the client of the firm. Setting up different types of governance structures, establishing appropriate and aligned with best practice billing guidelines, how to best evaluate your use of your firms through performance management, and then helping to develop alternative fee arrangement programs that bring alignment in terms of incentives between the in-house team and their outside counsel firms. So that's really the focus of today's conversation in terms of our services. But as we get started, we wanted to do what we often do on HBR webinars and polls and different sessions, is get a little bit of the input from all of you who are on. So if you can grab a phone, we're going to start with a little bit of polling here to get a pulse of the attendees in the audience. So if you just grab your phone, go to pollev.com/HBR200. This will be on the subsequent slides as well, but we put it in very large text here for the time being. So I will move on. And like I said, it'll still be at the top, but pollev.com/HBR200. And the first question we wanted to ask is where you're physically joining from. Let me just make sure this is activated here. Yep, it should activate and pop in. So just do your best. If you're on your phone, it's a little bit of a small map of the world. So do your best to click on where you're joining from. You can clear your response if you end up in the ocean or you didn't get it quite right, but we're starting to see a lot of folks popping in various parts of the US. We do have a lone person joining from way down in Australia. Is that you, Jim?
That is me. I didn't quite get it right. I'm about 300 or 400 miles south of where my where that little indicator is. So, but yeah, I won't clear it for now.
Normally we just do it for North America, but since Jim was joining from down under, we had to do a big map. So apologies for the inaccuracy of some of your pins. But maybe it looks like there's a couple of people up in Russia, perhaps, or parts of Central Asia. So yeah, maybe I'm getting it wrong. My map is my geography fails me here. But good to see representation. Kind of a fun one. It looks like somebody's out in the ocean off of Washington State. So I hope you're enjoying the sailing that you're probably doing from your boat. So anyway, it's a way to get things warmed up. We'll go on to the next one. This one's for those of you that are in law departments. If you're not part of a law department, we would ask that you just refrain from answering this particular one. We really want to get the input of the law departments. This is a ranking question. So you'll see there's 5 different types of issues that a lot of our clients are thinking about and dealing with. And these can be of different levels of priority. So the intent here is, as you see them, if you just click and tap on one, you can move up or down to put them in the appropriate ranking order of what is top of mind today. Is that clients and demand? Is it cost and spending, people and talent, process and workflow, or technology and tools? And as you complete the ranking, you can say submit response down at the bottom, and you'll start to see some of the responses popping up here as they complete them. So again, if you're a law department participant, would love your perspective on this. If you're not in the law department space, just sit this one out for the time being. We'll give it a couple of seconds here to let responses continue to come in. This is actually quite interesting, and I'll leave it open. So if you're still filling it out, you'll have a chance to continue. We won't move on to another poll for a couple of minutes, but it's interesting. So this should still allow you to respond if you haven't yet. But I'll fast forward. Back in April, we asked the exact same question. We had a group of key clients that we pulled together for what we're calling a sounding board. It was about a dozen or so of our top clients at HBR back in April. And we asked the exact same question: what was top of mind for our clients then back in April? You think about, flash back 2 months, it was really around how are my people going to react to working from home? Is my team healthy? How are my clients driving additional demand? And cost and spending, while still important, was really 5th out of 5 on this list. Fast forward a couple of months, on the right-hand side, we see these are the last 3 sector-specific sounding board sessions that we've conducted from May 15th to May 29th. And you'll notice that what was back in April, the 5th out of 5, has now jumped to number 1 out of 5. And that's consistent with what this group just responded to as well. If I jump back a slide, looks like cost and spending is still number 1. So a quite interesting shift or pivot in what is top of mind for a lot of departments. A couple months ago was really people and talent. Now it's really getting back into how do I best spend and monitor my budget as I continue through the pandemic and the associated challenges that a lot of departments and corporations are facing. Okay, one more polling question here. How has the current situation in light of the pandemic, COVID, et cetera, working from home, how has that impacted your legal budget or cost focus? So really a single answer here. Is it a significant reduction needed, moderate reduction, or no change? So go ahead and click on a single answer. We'll see the responses pop up here. Yeah, quite interesting. So far we're seeing 90%, just shy of 90 now, about 80%, have some kind of reduction that's necessary, or an additional focus on how you can manage that spending. And that's really the premise. That was our hypothesis, is that you would have this reaction. So it's we're seeing 85% now of the participants have some level of budget reduction necessary. Was there a comment? Sorry. Jim, did you have something, or David?
No, it's all good. Just confirming or validating, I suppose, the hypothesis that we started with. So that's
exactly right. Yeah, here it's 85, 83%. So the numbers are varying a little bit, which is actually even higher than the last couple of sessions we did. So back May 15th with a group of technology industry specific legal ops leaders, it was about 70%. We're seeing some kind of reduction required. Just shy of 70% in the healthcare sector. So we're going to continue to do this through our broader sessions that we do. And if you're not already plugged into one of those, and we happily get you going on future sessions. But we're starting to see, as this data just showed from this group on today's call, that the notion of having no change required into your budget is really becoming much more of the minority among law departments, given today's current economic and broader challenges that are being faced. So hopefully that was a little bit of helpful insight there. The final piece I'll share is this is another question that we asked in a recent sounding board series. And these list of different initiatives. So this is not a poll that I'm asking you to complete now. This is really just reporting out on a recent session where we had about a dozen participants on the session. And we listed, here were the top kind of criteria or rather initiatives that were part of our annual law department survey in 2019. So these were things that people had at varying levels of interest and priority coming into 2020. And the question that we asked in the broader session was, how has your priority changed? Has it gone up in priority? Has it gone down? Has it stayed neutral? And you'll see that as you think about the types of things that we'll talk about later today with PERSUIT's case studies, is the number one area that's really grown is a focus on alternative fee arrangements, getting more focus on that, increasing priority on that initiative, more consistent use of matter planning and budgeting, tougher enforcement of outside counsel billing guidelines, stricter guidelines on the use of outside counsel, and then particularly interesting for today's conversation is the use of competitive bidding and RFPs has risen to one of the top areas of focus, and specifically an increased amount of focus and priority in light of COVID and all that we're dealing with as an economy currently, and anticipate seeing into the weeks and months and even years ahead. So just hopefully this a little bit of industry trending, what we're seeing in the market, as well as your individual feedback so far on the session can help frame out a little bit of why we think this topic of cost certainty in uncertain times is so critical and relevant for today's discussion. So Jim, over to you for a little bit of your context on other trends you're seeing.
Thanks, Kevin. Look, and I've taken these out of the recent legal market intelligence report that the Buying Legal Counsel issued, and some, firstly, a shout out to Sylvia at Buying Legal Counsel. It was a great report, lots of insights, and we've just taken out a few here, which I think are kind of relevant to some of the topics we're talking about. The report starts out punching, if you like. It really talks about it bordering on negligence if the in-house legal team doesn't have some kind of a process, a procurement process around the engagement of outside counsel. It shouted out that I think legal spend now at the corporate level is something just crossed over $900 billion. So it's a significant part of corporate spend. The olden boys network being broken and personal relationships being replaced with professional relationships. And most importantly, and consistent with your previous slide, Kevin, the RFPs, AFAs, pre-matter scoping, they're all being the top strategies for achieving cost certainty and reduction and consistent and really leading the trends in relation to those objectives of cost certainty and cost reduction. This slide, I've taken the hourly. So we got a couple of graphs here, as you can see, and the topic here: are your annual fees increasing or decreasing? We split the two graphs here. The first one is actually taken from some Thomson Reuters data, and it was also included in the Buying Legal Counsel, and it's going to be familiar to everyone. It was certainly my favorite graph as a partner of a law firm with my previous career, and this is what we actually saw. We saw annual rate increases. I'm sure most of the in-house teams that are on this webinar will be familiar with a pretty consistent approach over the last 10 plus years of annual rate increases. So that used to be my favorite graph. My favorite graph now is the next one, which is what we're seeing when you're able to achieve matter level bidding. And we'll jump into some details around that and why that's being achieved. But I thought it was an interesting contrast to what's happening as a general industry trend to what can happen when in-house teams are focused on their spend at an individual matter level. So next slide, Kevin. And this explains part of the reason why you can achieve reduction at a matter level even when hourly rates are otherwise on the general increase. And this talks about being able to recognize that law firms, and indeed all professional service providers, have peaks and troughs in their own case flow and capacity, and being able to recognize that if you're asking for work during one of those peaks, the likelihood is it's going to be difficult to achieve discounted pricing. But if you're asking during one of the times at which there's essentially capacity or bums on seats, then that's a much greater opportunity to be able to achieve discounted pricing, or what we talk about true market pricing. So understanding this as an in-house team, and understanding that the capacity of a law firm can determine the pricing is really important part of the overall strategy to achieve cost certainty and cost reduction. Okay, but as we know, price is not everything. But what we've got to take care of is sometimes we can fall into the habit of saying, because price is not everything, then I don't have to worry about other factors, and I can choose essentially old habits of just going who I'm comfortable with, without actually having the discipline of identifying at a matter level what's important, how are we going to weight the level of that importance. And this is an example of one of our digital D&I scorecards, where, you know, identifying, for example, in relation to diversity, that's a weighting at 40%, price in this case is 5%, weight other attributes as appropriate, and then being able to have the discipline that at a matter level, this is how you're choosing your suppliers, your law firms, your rediscovery providers, your alternative legal service providers, and being able to then justify as the hows and the whys of your outside counsel or broader legal spend.
I mean, Jim, as this example illustrates, so By and By was the highest rated firm overall based on the criteria, even though Colmus and Colmus had the lowest price, and they had scored 5 stars on the pricing. But given what was important to this example, with diversity and subject matter expertise trumping pricing, even though Colmus and Colmus was the quote unquote cheapest bid, in this case, likely the law department would have gone with By and By for it. You know, it is slightly more expensive, but the overall rating, given how it lines up with the other criteria and importance for that law department, would make that a better choice. Is that a fair interpretation?
Exactly right, Kevin. And it is all about, again, just identifying. It's never the lowest price. It's about identifying what weighting am I putting on price, but more importantly, what weighting am I putting on the other criteria, what is important, and then being able to have a process around assessing the different levels of weighting, and then overall choice. And as you've said, in this case, it not being the case that it's not the lowest price, but in fact it's a higher price, but that's because there are other more important criteria that have elevated in the decision making here or in the choice. Cool. I think we could probably move to the next slide, and then back over to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Jim. So we're super excited to announce this. This was just announced formally by ACC this week. We've known about it for a while, but had to keep it as best as we could under wraps. So we're thrilled that we were able to partner with Exelon, and I think there's some folks on Exelon on the call. So hi those that I think Marge and Melissa both. Thanks for joining the session and also for your partnership. So just a little bit of context here. So back at actually, I think it was at a clock conference. I was doing a presentation with I think someone else who is also on the line. Pratik at Elevate was I think on this webinar, and Pratik and I were doing a presentation around the legal operations maturity models at the Clock Institute in Las Vegas. And as part of that, one of the topics we cover on the maturity models is outside counsel management or partner vendor management. And so coming out of that session, Melissa at Exelon reached out and said, we'd like to understand more about how HBR might be able to help Exelon think through moving towards a tighter partnership with a subset of firms. Exelon had been through a series of mergers over the years and hadn't really done a go-to-market invitation for firms to bid since 2012. So it had been several years since they did that. We came in, we met with the leadership team, described how we would approach it, and were then engaged by Exelon to help facilitate a process of a tighter partnership with a smaller group of firms. For those that don't know Exelon, if you're in the parts of the country, you're probably familiar with the name, but it's a Fortune 100 energy and utility provider. About a $35 billion company in terms of revenue, 227 employees in the law department. And there were a lot of firms. There were hundreds of firms in the mix, and the desire was, through those acquisitions, how could we rationalize the number of firms that we're working with and make sure we have really tight partnerships with the firms that are aligned with Exelon's values, which included things like diversity, included things around sustainability of the business and environmental practices. So as Jim's prior slide alluded to, it wasn't just about the history with Exelon and just about price, it was about expertise and other key criteria and initiatives that were important to the company. So we helped facilitate a lot of data analysis at the outset, pulling together historical data that that firms have been submitting through e-billing to identify where the different price points were, things like staffing mix, how were certain matters or certain practice areas or certain business units being, different staffing profiles from outside counsel, what the different rates were. So did a lot of analysis, about 2.5 years worth of data, to then inform which of those firms that historically had relationships were the best aligned with Exelon's future vision, sent an RFP to a subset of the broader group, and then had a series of conversations, interviews, to then land on a set of preferred firms, 7 firms that are part of that really core group of firms, and then other tiers of the preferred provider panel. But worked through that, was a great team effort, very engaged group of senior lawyers at Exelon to really drive that to a conclusion and reaching a selection of a subset of the broader firms that they would partner more closely with and drive greater value and greater relationship development. And that really helped tee up some savings that were able to be reinvested back into other internal programs at Exelon for the law department, including some salary adjustments for the internal team and investing in additional career development opportunities. This is all profiled out on the ACC website. We'll give a link to that, I think, as the PDF when we circulate this. But it's been a great story of success. And then once they got the panel in place, that's when they started to work more directly with PERSUIT. And I'll let David tell the story of how PERSUIT picked up once the panel was established with some ongoing matter-specific bidding and some savings that they were able to achieve through that as well.
Awesome, thanks, Kevin. And Jim, please feel free to step in too and provide some of the historical context, because I wasn't here when we first kicked things off with Exelon, but can certainly talk to the program that that Exelon has helped to build utilizing PERSUIT. So after establishing the panel, the thought was, well, how do we have sustainable results now moving forward? So hourly rates are a really important part of the equation, and there's a lot of really qualitative and important benefits to a panel beyond price, of course. But the question is, how does Exelon ensure that it's going to get the best price or the right price for a particular matter? So, and also, how do you know which of your panel firms to go with for matter A or matter B? So one of the things that Exelon started to do was to send out RFPs, sort of mini RFPs on a matter by matter basis, utilizing the PERSUIT software to its panel firms. So the panel that was established with the help of HBR, Exelon said, let's have a fair and objective way to choose between those panel firms on a matter by matter basis. Send the request out to those panel firms, allow them to submit pricing and information on how they would approach this particular case on PERSUIT, and then make our selection decision on PERSUIT. And by doing that, we were able to achieve some really significant cost savings. We were also able to utilize more AFAs on a matter-by-matter basis via those matter-level bids. And it also led to some really improved outcomes. One of those outcomes was, well, Exelon, they wanted to drive spend to the panel firms, but they also, it's been a really critical objective of theirs to drive spend to minority and women-owned law firms as well. And so by including diverse firms as part of the matter level RFP process, they were able to actually present some new firms to managing attorneys at the matter level. And so overall, just an amazing accomplishment that Exelon was able to really reform its entire outside counsel engagement program. So just an amazing leadership story. As we move on to and I'll stop there. Jim, I don't know if Jim or Kevin, if you want to make any other comments, or even if anyone on Exelon on the line would like to make a comment, happy to stop here and pause.
I suppose from my perspective, a shout out to Melissa, who I know is on, and also Tom O'Neill, the General Counsel of Exelon. I remember actually very well, it's probably a couple of years ago now, when it was early in the days of PERSUIT, when Melissa had introduced me to Tom, and we had our very first discussion about PERSUIT, the objectives, and Tom really kind of was leading the pack at that point, said, we have to do this. This is something, and that was a couple of years ago now, and certainly an early adopter, if you like, and a leader in the industry. So a shout out there to Tom and the whole Exelon legal team.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think Tom's leadership is an example of the type of top-down buy-in, accountability, engagement that is a critical part of any kind of outside counsel program success. There were some very tough conversations that needed to take place with some firms that had worked with the law department for many, many years. But in the interest of forming tighter partnerships and being a true aligned service provider, the leadership at Exelon was willing to have the difficult conversations around, this is where we're going and this is what we need you to align with. So I think that's a critical part. Obviously, you have to have a groundswell of support and people contributing their perspectives to establish a well-defined panel program, but having top-down leadership that is willing to go out and lead first with their own relationships was something that we saw as really a differentiator in this example, and one that I think is a key part of successful outside counsel programs. So again, just a shout out for Tom and the full team, Melissa and Marge and Holly, et cetera, that were part of making this such a successful project.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. So just kind of moving on here, we talked about this in relation to Exelon, but one of the points that we really want to drive home is that panel management, we're trying to encourage people to think of panel management more broadly and to have a sustainable panel that has an objective criteria for making selections, law firm selections, even beyond the first step of just establishing who is on our panel. So we wanted to really drive home, establishing who's on your panel is step one. But beyond that, there's always going to be additional nuances. So what about situations where you need to have regional firms? Think about the patent agent filing process. You need to have agents around the world. So that kind of breaks down the global panel model. So there's still additional thoughts and considerations you need to do to additional RFPs at the regional level for those types of situations. And then also, like I mentioned, who do you select? Which firms, even from amongst your panel, do you select on a matter-by-matter basis? And by doing that, as we've talked, that Jim alluded to as well, you're aligning firm selection with the firm that has the best capacity and most needs the work at that period of time, which we think is just a really fair way to treat your panel firms in a way that also saves you money. So we can kind of move on to the next one.
Yeah, I might just mention there too, David, that often panels have ended up in disappointment for both the clients because of the huge effort they went to put the panel together, and sometimes the firms too, because there hasn't been, once that significant effort of putting together a panel of firms, there hasn't been the kind of level of consistency and transparency at the engagement levels. So I've heard time and time again, and I've been at the receiving end of law firms doing a lot of work to get on a panel, and then crickets after that, and not actually understanding, well, why am I missing out? What's actually going on, and providing a level of, as I said, transparency and consistency around the way in which panel firms are engaged, see what's available, and are given an opportunity to present, if you like, when matters arise is something which is a benefit not only to the clients, but certainly to the law firm. So I think what we're trying to do is change that, what's often been disappointment after all of the work of putting a panel together, to opportunity, and as I said, transparency and some consistency.
All right, so here's a representative example of what we're talking about when we talk about matter level bidding. So you can see here that you've got a graph. This shows you that during the course of a 1 hour period, how much firms can adjust their price for you because they have that added capacity and they really want your business. So in this particular example, you see there's in a 1 hour period, there are 14 price revisions from the 4 or 5 firms that are participating. And the total price reductions range from 17% all the way up to 66%. 66% drop in the total price that the firms proposed to do the work. And so we're talking price of fixed fee for the entire life of the matter, from early case assessment all the way through trial. But you're also within PERSUIT able to break out that pricing by phase as well, which allows you to get some predictability. Even if the case settles or is dismissed early, you're never going to pay for the full amount. And you could the firm that was selected on this actually dropped it was achieved a 30% savings as the difference between the selected firm and that firm's final offer is a 30% drop. So a really great example. We can go ahead and move to the next one. When we first engage a client at PERSUIT, one of the things that we do, and this also HBR has been a great partner and can helps with this type of mapping process as well. We want to look at what is your spend breakdown by practice area and come up with a really targeted approach for what your matter level engagement process is going to be. For instance, with litigation, we think it's a great process for every single matter. Use PERSUIT and send out a mini RFP, include your panel firms, and ask for fixed fees for every single litigation matter that comes in the door. That approach can't work in every area. So in IP, there's too many matters. You've got thousands and thousands of patent filings, too many matters to do a matter level bid for every single matter that you have. So what we've helped clients do in that situation is to send out an RFP for an entire portfolio of work. So what is going to be a fixed fee that you charge me for every single patent prosecution, for every office action, for every renewal? And so we've helped clients put together an RFP that achieves those fixed fees, and then the firms agree to those fixed fees and they apply those fees in any matter in which they are assigned over the course of the next year or 2 years. That's an example of, so what we do, we start out, we figure out, let's break out the different practice areas. Let's come up with a sort of a bidding rule or an approach that's practice area specific. And then once we have those rules, we'll deploy PERSUIT across the department. And Jim or Kevin, I don't know if you wanted to talk on that a little bit further before we hop into the next one.
I think it's certainly a good high level summary.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Cool. I might jump into this one, David. So this is an example, a recent example where we work with Corteva. And it comes under the IP category that we saw on the previous slide, where Corteva needed to basically review their hourly rates with their patent agents across the world. So what Corteva did is they ran, it's a great example, they ran 9 simultaneous auctions in different jurisdictions around both the hourly rates that the patent agents were charging, as well as fixed fees for certain matters such as patent filings and so forth. Now, during the course of, and we all did this, I think, in about 3 weeks. So there were 9 jurisdictions, 43 participating firms, participating in relation to both their hourly rates and fixed fees. And overall, there were rate reductions between 10 to 60%. And you'll see a graph on the right-hand side showing the average price drops during that reverse auction period across all of their different jurisdictions. So you can see ranging from 5 or 10% right through to above 30%. So a couple of things to shout out here. One, an illustration that we often, and we hear a lot that I think we've got the very best hourly rates, and we've negotiated the best hourly rates in the jurisdiction. We hear that a lot. It's difficult for everyone to say they've negotiated the best hourly rates, and sometimes you just don't know. You don't know until you've given your firms the opportunity to actually compete for a defined, whether it's a defined scope of work or an anticipated level of work. So demonstrating that there can be real additional savings even at the hourly rate level, as well as, of course, at the individual item level, depending upon how you've defined that item, as I said, such as a patent filing or a contested or uncontested. And being able to do that, and what we're really proud of, being able to do that literally in several weeks' time. I remember during the course of that, the client was so excited that she was emailing during, I think the reverse auctions were happening around midnight her time, and she was emailing us super excited about the results that were going on. And by 1 a.m. she'd actually emailed through a PowerPoint presentation, which was going to be presented to the leadership team the following day, saying, "Hey, this is what we've been able to achieve in relation to our hourly rates across 9 jurisdictions with multiple providers." So a really, a strong case study there. David, I don't know if there's anything you want to shout out there that I might have missed.
It was a great project, and one that the client said, look, Corteva said, this probably would have taken us multiple months to figure this whole thing out, but having your template, we were able to do it in such a quick, short turnaround time, and I think that was really impactful for them, and they were really, really pleased about that.
Yep. And I'll go through just one more case study. The next slide, again, it's a Corteva one. It's in relation to e-discovery, and again, a similar thing. I think Corteva had planned to run essentially. Had decided they needed to choose an e-discovery vendor. They assessed how much work they thought they had over the course of the next 12 months in relation to how much e-discovery work. And I think they went out to 8 or so. I think it might have been 10 initially, and a couple of the vendors had been eliminated, and they went down to 8 vendors. And during a 2-hour reverse auction, they saw 34 price revisions. 2 of the vendors reduced their prices by more than 45%. The top half of the graph that you can see there, that they are each of the line items and the reductions achieved across those line items. And Corteva estimated that they'd save $2 million in their very first use of PERSUIT, just by, again, this is really at that matter level bidding, being able to use the PERSUIT template for e-discovery, identify all of the line items, and send it out to their preferred vendors, and achieve what we talk about, true market pricing at any time, and an overall 30% reduction. And I think again they had planned a 6-month process to achieve this, and start to end, I think we did in 3 or 4 weeks.
Hey,
so
Jim,
again,
it occurs to me we've got, so as I said at the outset, HBR works with both law departments and law firms. And I mean, I could see examples here. We've talked about Exelon and Corteva as law departments, but a lot of these different categories are the types of things that law firms will also have partners with as well. So do you have law firms using PERSUIT as well? And just any perspective on that, having yourself been a former partner at a AmLaw 10 law firm?
Well, it's funny you actually raised that. So at this stage we don't, but we think it's actually an obvious market for law firms to be doing the same thing, because they are the buyers of the same legal services, or the same related legal services. So I think that I have to say that there's a real opportunity there. And it's actually just taking a manual and cumbersome process, and one that's not transparent at all, to kind of streamlining and achieving that true market pricing in any particular jurisdiction at any point in time. So yeah, I think you're right to shout that out.
Yeah, both law firms using it for their use, and then frankly, I think law departments not only thinking about it for use with law firms, but as this example cites, being able to think about how can you create, some competition and visibility into spending on the non-law firms that you're working with as well, the different service providers.
Correct.
Yeah, I told Jim this, but there was a big technology implementation project with a Fortune 100 financial services company where HBR received from a client. It was a document management implementation, and we received an opportunity to come and bid. So we actually have been on the other side of PERSUIT ourselves, and our CEO was actually on it, and he was just fascinated by watching this. And so both as a partner that sees it as a value-added solution for our law department clients, and as a user who is a participant.
And I think you might have won that one too, if I remember correctly.
I think we've got the project. I don't think we had the lowest price. So that's just another example of it's not just about the price point. But yeah, it was a fascinating experience to be on the receiving end as a consulting firm. So think about the places where cost predictability. Maybe it's your firms, maybe it's your non-law firm providers, but really this is just a platform that takes what we have seen our clients struggle with in like a tool like Ariba or a broader corporate tool that's maybe not tailored for the legal space, and seeing some additional value and simplicity, and not only using it, but as I'm sure you saw in that first slide, as many law departments are starting to use the platform, the law firms are starting to see this, and it becomes I know the drill here, because it's pretty standardized, and it's hopefully, I would assume so, while maybe not something that firms are loving to have to go through a bidding process, at least it's simple and it's easy to complete relative to other tools that may not be tailored for the legal space. So in fact, that, just not to go too far on that topic, but as we started to see the benefit when we ask our clients about what they're focusing on, and RFPs and bidding becoming more and more popular, we added in 2019 a category in the technology section of our law department survey. We added a category for matter RFP tools. And it was interesting to see that it's still relatively low in terms of formal adoption. I think we had about 20% of our 300 or so participants say that they're using a matter RFP tool. But it was interesting to see the difference between the level of satisfaction, because we asked, have you implemented something? Or are you exploring potential implementation? If you have implemented, what platform are you using? And then also, what are your level of satisfaction with the tools that you've implemented? This is across 20 different technology categories, so legal RFPs is just one of those. But it was interesting to see the difference between tools that are specifically built for the legal space in terms of satisfaction, and those like Ariba or corporate RFP tools where the level of satisfaction is quite low. So again, just an interesting data point that we've seen, asking questions about technology and the benefit of something that's tailored to the legal space in terms of adoption, usage, simplicity, intuitive, and all of that. So Jim or David, anything to add on that topic?
I was going to, and that's why HBR is such a great partner. That plug was fantastic, Kevin.
It wasn't intended to be a plug, just more of what we're seeing in our market. But obviously, your list of clientele on the first slide speaks for itself. So, all right, enough with the love fest.
Excellent. So I think we're probably getting close to the Q&A. Is that right?
Yeah, I think we're at Q&A time.
Fantastic.
So everyone, if you can, we really encourage ask as many questions as you can. Click the raise your hand button, and we can allow you to speak. Right now, you're all automatically muted. So unfortunately, if you're talking at me and yelling at me, I can't hear anything you're saying. So just click the raise your hand button. I can let you speak, or you can submit questions via the Q&A button. So we'll go ahead and stick on the line.
Yeah, there was one Q&A that Dan Young at Boston Scientific submitted about, are we going to be sharing the deck? So I responded to that on the Q&A, and the answer is yes, we will share the deck for those. And we're also recording the webinar as well, so we'll be able to get that shared more broadly. But yes, the answer is we'll be able to share the deck with the participants. See anything else come through, David, on the Q&A?
Not seeing anything coming through.
We've never had people upset with us for ending early. So if there aren't questions, we can give you guys back 15 minutes of your afternoon for most of the Western Hemisphere, and Jim, your morning for you down in, okay, it looks like a question just came in. Hold on.
Let's see, what techniques are using to evaluate the capacity of firms? So what techniques?
Yeah, well, I'll jump in there. Look, typically the technique is just by making the firms aware of the opportunity. So it's been difficult in the past because it's been a manual process, and it's been hard enough to go out and receive, 2 responses to an RFP, because you've got to review it all manually. But simply by being able to identify and invite more firms, that's really how you're able to see the pricing from those firms. That's how you're able to gain much better transparency and visibility across the capacity of those firms. And again, that's been missing in the past because it's been painful to add another firm. But what we've tried to do is make that a lot easier. Yeah, as I said, create then visibility in relation to that capacity.
Yeah, I don't know that as we think about kind of the panel process when we help our clients, we haven't had an experience where a firm comes back and says, you know what, we're too busy to take on additional work. In fact, if anything, and hi Preston, thanks for the question. We have had instances, and we try to counsel both our law department clients and our law firm clients to say, don't overextend, right? We'll have instances where there's a panel RFP and the law department has 15 different categories of legal work. And the law firm may have only worked in 1 or 2 of those historically. And they might have one lawyer who focuses on this particular type of law, and they'll say, oh, well, we do that. So I'm gonna check the box and try to bid for that area as well, even though the capacity of the firm is like one lawyer who could do that. So our counsel to both our law departments and law firms is make sure that as you're sending out and inviting firms to bid, that you make it clear to the firms, we're gonna judge you, yes, on your expertise in a particular area, but the totality of your response. So if you don't have the capacity or you don't have the level of expertise, don't reach too far. There is value for sure in opening up RFP processes to say, look, I've only ever worked with you in employment, firm A, but here's 5 other areas that maybe we aren't aware of. So if you have a strong practice and you have good relevant experience, perhaps with other companies in my space, by all means, bid for that work. But the notion of if you don't have the capacity or you don't have enough people or the expertise in that area, don't stretch for it, because it can actually hinder your overall response if you go beyond what really is your sweet spot in that response. So anyway, hopefully that helps a little bit. We don't formally evaluate the capacity as either PERSUIT or HBR, at least I don't think you guys do, but kind of seeing who comes in and how aggressive their pricing is can kind of be a de facto visibility into a firm's capacity or availability for that. So I hope that helps, Preston, if you're able to hear that response.
And one other comment, just to flow on, a lot of the feedback we've had from firms is we weren't aware that our client was sending out so much work in relation to other areas. And having now been aware, it gives us, the law firm, a better opportunity to be able to essentially present in relation to those other areas that were otherwise not working with the client on. So again, that's part of the understanding the kind of work that the client is issuing out and giving law firms the opportunity that they otherwise might not have had if it was being sole sourced to a single firm. Yeah, and another thing that just as in terms of a best practice that we often see folded into a preferred provider program is the notion of having not only an external law firm relationship partner, but an internal law department point person who may or may not know the firm extensively themselves, but they're essentially acting as an ambassador to that preferred firm to be able to have communication throughout the law department to say, we've only ever worked with this firm in this particular area. We've only ever done commercial work, but they have a litigation team that's done a lot of great work, and being that kind of facilitator and that ambassador of the preferred firm to be able to say, like, they have capacity in this area, they're really good, let's give them a try on this new matter, and have that two-way communication where it really is less about the lowest possible price. It's about creating that relationship to where you can have somebody internally at the law department who is part of their responsibility is to make sure that we are in fact using our preferred firms in a meaningful way. We're giving them feedback on how they can improve and how they're aligning with our values and our things that are priorities for us as a law department.
And in some cases, we recommend, or we recommend it all the time, some cases it's applied, ask firms for their feedback as well on how the law department could be a better partner. We have found that firms are a little bit reticent to come back with anything but praise for their clients, but we think it's, that notion of tighter partnerships and candid conversations around where both the law department and the law firm can improve is a key part of a tight and well-working panel program.
All right.
Other questions?
Yeah, let's keep them coming. Anyone have any other questions? Reminder, click the raise your hand button. We can unmute your line, or you can just type them into the Q&A.
So we're just at about 50 minutes or so.
It looks like we got someone raising their hand here. So let me go ahead. Looks like.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep, gotcha.
Hi, it's Mike Haven. So to your point, Kevin, that you just made, is there a module in the tool to capture results metrics, both quantitative and qualitative on the back end, and even perhaps to get feedback from both the client and the firm as to how the matter went and whether it worked for both sides?
So Mike, as Jim here, I might jump in on there. So the way our clients typically do that, you remember the scorecard that that I showed earlier. Often, what our clients have done is to leave a percentage, let's say 20%, as a criteria for end of matter rating or overall assessment of how the matter has gone, so that at the end of the matter, clients can go back and basically complete the scorecard with that weighting, and then have that for the purpose of their future assessment when they're reviewing, let's say, that firm again, and being able to say, well, look, typically firm X in their last 3 matters has got a 4 out of 5 star rating. So that's typically how we do that. If the assessment already exists in your matter management system, there are some matter management systems that require you to rate before you can close a matter. Then we can essentially take that data and bring that back into PERSUIT through an integration. So they're usually the 2 ways we handle the end of project rating, if you like.
How about from the law firm side?
Feedback from the law firm side?
Yeah, just to get their view on how the matter went, both quantitatively and qualitatively.
Again, you could actually just create a new category, and law firm feedback, and then place any kind of weighting or assessment you like on that category, and then and get their feedback. You could certainly do that. And
Mike, for what it's worth, and we haven't talked about it really much on this call, but one of the things, we have an integration between Counsel Command, which is our analytics platform, that HBR, basically our analytics service, and PERSUIT, so that you can bring in data from PERSUIT on the bid and the feedback, and then supplement that with other data points that may be captured in other systems. And so in our case, we'll work with our clients, like with Exelon specifically, we have a evaluation process that we go through, and we're sending that out to, and we haven't done it with the firms, but we have done it with other clients with the firms to gather that data via a survey platform, be able to ingest it and then visualize it through Counsel Command as well. So you've got the ability to have, whether it's your law firms, your law department, providing feedback on the firms. And in the case of Exelon, we're actually working with them on having the law department ask key clients in the business for feedback as well, ingesting that data via a survey platform, and then being able to visualize that through an analytics solution as well. So the short answer is, whether it's done directly within PERSUIT or other survey platforms and partnerships, there's a way to be able to gather that data and then visualize it to share that feedback both with firms and with the internal department as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for the question. Open mic. We can wrap it in maybe 1 more minute. Any other questions?
Yeah.
So we'll lower your hand, Mike, here. Let's see. Okay, that hand is lowered. Any other questions before we wrap?
I think that might be a wrap, Kevin.
Sounds great.
All right.
You want to close us out just with some kind of closing comments?
Thank you guys. Thank you all so much for joining. We really appreciate all the questions. If you have any other questions, my contact is david@persuit.com. Feel free to send me any questions that you may have. And then we'll also be able to make this this recording available. Just reach out to us and we'll be able to send it your way. So thank you all again. Any other comments from Kevin or Jim?
No,
thanks everyone for joining.
A lot of friends and clients and contacts on the line. So good to see you. Thanks for joining. Stay safe. See you guys soon.
Bye.
All the best.
Bye.